Let's get rolling. Hey, welcome everybody to this local food movement panel, Growing Health in Your Backyard. And when I say backyard, I mean the big backyard, the collective backyard. You know, we all have our own homes and we might have our little backyards, but let's talk about ourselves as a St. Louis region. And when I talk about the backyard, we're talking about, you know, this whole area and all the great innovation that is happening with people growing good food and healthy communities through the work that they're doing. We've got three fantastic panelists today. Jill Duncan with Loving Roots Urban Farm. How you doing, Jill?
Doing great. Excited to share what I learned this year and listen to the other panelists.
All right, that's great. And we've got Matthew Lebon with Custom Foodscaping. Hi there, Matt. How you doing tonight? Oh, he's muted.
Well, top of the evening to you there, Bob.
Top of the evening, I love it. And then Tyrean Lewis with Heru Urban Farm. How you doing tonight?
Good. Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
Yeah, cool. So these events are sponsored through a grant with Solid Waste Management District of St. Louis, Jefferson County, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and Sauce Magazine. So we want to give a shout out to our wonderful sponsors to make these things possible. And we're going to get short presentations from each of the three panelists. Our panelists will ask each other some questions, so you might be able to get some good insights from them, but please feel free to type questions, stuff into the chat, and we will make sure that we will feed those to our presenters. So we're going to start it off with Tyrean Lewis. Take it away. He's going to get going, and maybe you have to share your screen and get rolling, but that's cool.
All right, get this started. Hello, everyone. My name is Tyrean Lewis, and I'm the founder and CEO of Heru Urban Farming. Our mission is to bring healthy, sustainable produce to those who need it the most. Heru Urban Farming provides sustainable, healthy food options for food apartheid communities. In addition to produce, we provide economic growth, cooking classes, hands-on training for growers, health education, herbal remedies, and a rebirth of togetherness within the community. Now, I know everyone heard about food deserts, but food deserts is a food shortage that's done naturally. And food apartheid is when food shortages is deliberately done.
Thanks for that clarification, Tyrean. That, you know, a lot of people just don't think about the language we're using, so I really appreciate you bringing that perspective in.
Yes, sir. So I started this business back in 2018. Basically, one day I wanted some fresh produce, and I didn't feel like going all the way down to Soulard. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try out the Snooks on Union. Went to that Snooks. I wasn't impressed. And to their and in respect to them, they have gotten better. But at that time, I went in there and I was like, oh man, this has got to be better. So I went to Lindell. Went to that Snooks. It was a little better, but not quite what I expected. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna turn this to a field trip. Then I went to the Snooks in Clayton. I went in there. I was like, wow. I mean, they had an abundance of produce everywhere. So I said, you know what, I'll take this one step further. So I went to the Snooks in West County. Went to that Snooks. I was like, wow, I didn't even know it was a Snooks. I mean, they was cooking sushi. They had a winery going on. All this nice, fresh produce that was abundant. So I told myself, you know what? I'm going to do something about that. And I did. All right. I am a fourth generational farmer. My great uncle, Minor Washington, was the first place district fair winner in Lamar County, Texas. And in 1952 for his purple hub peas and his homemade popcorn. Prior to that accomplishment, in 1939, my great uncle was a part of an all-black co-op who purchased 28 acres to grow tomatoes. Okay, so the problem is 84% of Missouri cropland is used for animal feed or processing. Less than 1% is used to grow food. The food insecurity rate is 14%, which is higher than a national average. Most of our fruits and veggies travel over 12,000 miles away. Over 700,000 have limited access to healthy food options within a half mile of their neighborhood. Solution, sustainable healthy food choices, local, fresh, organic, and non-GMO foods, agricultural literacy, cooking classes, and training sessions. A couple of things that we do, that we serve, we do CSAs, which is a community supported agriculture, which is basically a food subscription. We provide, not too much this year because of COVID, but we do supply small businesses with produce, farmers markets, we do speaking engagements, and we do agricultural literacy classes. Yeah, and this is just an addition to what we provide. It's just an example of this picture of a youth program that came over called The Village. They came over and helped out. This was last year. Actually, we haven't did too much of that this year. We only did one because of circumstances, but this is an example of that. And we do consulting as well. Okay. So my team has, I have one full-time worker and one part-time worker. My part-time worker is a resident of Covenant House, which is a homeless shelter for young adults. I also have my full-time worker. He's the first participant of my rehabilitation program for those who struggle with addictions. And I also have a slew of volunteers, and my advisory team has over 25 years of experience. Where we go and what we grow. So we grow a variety of heirloom fruits and veggies. We have a farm that we rent the space. Is out on Bell Grove Drive and Bell Fountain. Actually, the properties are rented from Bowling Farms. He's also a black farmer as well. So I have that property. I also have also grow on Maffitt, which is in the city of St. Louis on the west side. That's my baby. That's my first one. Just a couple of pictures I have. And actually, I'm proud of that watermelon. That was 33 pounds, actually. That's a Jubilee watermelon. But so, like I said, I started in 2018. I started with 12,000 square feet, and I have 2.5 acres. Basically just through grants and things of that nature. And I'm just amazed on how fast everything been picking up, but this is what I love to do. So, I guess you put your energy into it, good things come out. Some of my milestones I accomplished that I'm proud of is I was part of this year. I actually got the Moonshot for a Commitment Award to my community. That was a humbling experience for that. I also had a St. Louis Philanthropic grant. I received 2 grants from the Boston Foundation. I also was a part of the first ever cohort for We Power Elevate Elevar program, and they help first-time entrepreneurs for Black and Latinos. All right, and yeah, if you have any questions or want to reach out to me, beyond this day, my website is heruurbanfarming.com. My email address is the same, heruurbanfarming@gmail.com, and all my social media, Instagram and Facebook is also Heru Urban Farming as well. Also, in the chat, I'll put in a link to, I'm doing a crowdfunding right now with Kiva. And basically, they have all the details in it, but it allowed me to get some equipment that I need to make my job easier, and also probably get some funds so I can purchase a few more lots in the city of St. Louis. And yes, I'm open to any questions.
Tyrean, that's awesome. I mean, this is amazing what you've pulled together. And how long have you been doing this again? It's a couple years?
Yeah, this is my 3rd season on this level. I have grown food in buckets and stuff, things of that nature in my backyard, like tomatoes and peppers and things like that. But yeah, 3 years. 3 years
on this. Hey, Jill or Matt, do you have some questions for Tyrean from your experience? What are you thinking? What struck your curiosity?
I mean, the biggest thing that pops out to me is was this phrase that you used, which was agricultural literacy.
Yeah.
And because I feel like that's just so key. I grew up so agriculturally illiterate, and I think that is what kept me from making food, from making the ecological food choice. And I'm wondering if you could expound upon agricultural literacy and why it's important.
Oh man, it's important. It's important to me from a spiritual point of view. So basically, what I mean that just basically, well, first and foremost, most of us when we grow up, we're not privileged to have taste different crops and different foods. So, for example, something like zucchini, beets, just something as simple as that. I didn't eat that growing up at all. So it's good to educate people about it. What's the health benefits of it? How to grow it? Things of that nature. What's the proper terminology for different things? Also, just on a spiritual aspect, food is life. You know, just like water is life, soil is life. So, you know, everything we eat, it nourishes our body. For example, if I'm constipated, something like that, I'll eat some greens or some cabbage. You know, things like that. So you don't always have to go to the over-the-counter medicines or things of that nature. So just basically just giving them a brief history, you know, about it, where it comes from, the importance of it, and how to prepare the food and how to cook it properly.
Yeah, that's great. I'm super excited about that question. I'm glad that you're working in that arena there, Tyrean. Jill, did you have something that sparked your curiosity with this operation?
No, you know, he answered most of my questions already, so, but I'd love to visit.
All right. Oh yeah, it's open to anybody that want to come visit and volunteer as well.
So we got Becky Halcomb is asking Tyrean, how did you decide where to start your farm? And how did you go about finding funding for it?
Okay.
I mean, amazing you found some grants and stuff.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So after my experience, my field trip to Snooks, basically I was sitting on my porch, I was looking across the street, and I seen an open field, you know, and it just had trash on there like an eyesore. So it took me a year to manifest it. Actually, I was sitting there thinking, visualizing it, how it was going to look. And when I mean manifest, I mean from the minute details, like how the wind blow through my hair on my arm, you know, how the smell is and everything. So I was like, so that was just, obviously that was my spot right across the street from where I lived at that point in time. And it was just convenient. However, if you are looking to the farm in the city of St. Louis, they have a thing called a gardening lease. And that's on LRA lots. And that's $5 for 5 years. And you can lease your land like that, but you have to grow food on it. And with grants, I was blessed to come across with resources from Tasha Phoenix, and she's with MCE and Feed, and she basically was a lifesaver for me. She sent me a list of resources, and I just, you know, went through them. And I was looking for grant writers, couldn't find any, so I just told myself, you know what, I'm gonna have to write it myself, and that's what I did. And you know, so there's resources out there. The point is getting to the resources, getting access to the resources, but it's some out there, and yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, that was the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. Tasha Phoenix is part of the Known and Grown program, right? Mm-hmm. So she's
actually
with Gender Rose and the other folks over there, right?
Yeah.
Known and Grown do that, and you're part of that program too?
Yes, sir. I'm also a board member of Slow Food St. Louis and Food Equity Advisory Board as well.
That's great, Tyrean. Well, let's we're going to move on to Jill Duncan with Urban Roots, Loving Roots Urban Farm. Well, you can talk better on that, but super excited to have you here. From what I understand, you went through a whole apprenticeship with Earth Dance, and then this was your first season farming solo?
Right. Yeah, I did the apprenticeship in 2017, so it's been a few years ago. And that was the year that I went from being a backyard gardener to like, I know I have to be a farmer. Actually, Matt was my inspiration. He's on here too. But so then I just did a lot of self-study and went to work on a similar small scale farm in Des Moines, Iowa last year. And then decided this was the year for Loving Roots Urban Farm. So I'm actually housed at Earth Dance Organic Farm School in Ferguson. I'm helping them start a pilot program for like an incubator farm for new farmers. So it's been a great year. I think it was really successful. I'm on 1/8 of an acre, so maybe I can share, see if I can share my
Yeah, let's see some photos.
All right.
It's dinner time.
I'm not as put together as Tyrean was there. I do have some pictures.
I know, tough act to follow there. You got amazing stuff going on there, man. But yeah, it's all right. I tasted some of your produce, and it was out of this world. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
You know, and I also, you know, just standing in line to get, you know, at your booth, and the personal attention that you give to each individual, the customer service there. I mean, it's such a joy to see someone that engaged with your customers and such. So it was a really wonderful experience for me.
That's really, for me, like the best part is handing that over to each person and like getting to know them. And yeah, I love that part of it. So this is my 8th acre that I'm on. I have 30 50-foot beds. And so my focus is on leafy greens, as you can see. I specialized in growing lettuce even throughout the summer, the hot season. So that's what I've been studying the last few years, and I think it was a successful year. So I just wanted to talk about like some things that I've learned this year. So more like an educational problem and solution talk. So some things that I ran up against this year, although it was successful, I would say one thing that I really learned and want to dial in, because I think like instead of like scaling up, it's better for me to dial things in and kind of grow on the same size plot instead of like going into more land. It's about how do I dial in the things that I know how to do and how do I do them better on the same size plot. So one thing was, you can see these are my overhead wobblers. It's like a sprinkler system that I use to cool off the lettuce. So like in the summer, you know, lettuce wants to bolt and go bitter. But one way that you can overcome that, there's other things as well, but is to mist them regularly, which is like tricking them to like think that they're cooler than they really are. So it's a great system. The only thing that I found is that with the other crops that I grow, say carrots or scallions or turnips or like brassicas that are under the nets, maybe didn't want as much water. So I found some issues with just like maybe needing to dial in like zones in my plot and really focusing on what gets, like lettuce will get more overhead watering and other things might get less. So just creating more like a zone system. Another big thing that kind of goes along with that is I grow a lot of crops under these insect nets. This is arugula. This was back in the spring. So here are the nets. And
I just jumped right into that screen. Oh my God, it looks so delicious.
Yeah, this was actually, I was going out and just picking some arugula it was like the first time I harvested off of like the beds that I had grown. This was like in April, and you can see the smile on my face. A glorious day.
Yeah, totally.
I wasn't like, it was just me like picking some arugula for salad, but for my dinner that night. But the nets have been really great this year. They protect the brassicas, especially against like flea beetles and caterpillars and things. But what I found was with that overhead watering system in the nets, the humidity would get trapped in the nets and there wasn't enough airflow and maybe like too much water in the beds and on the leaves. So I would have a beautiful bed like this or like this. Let me see if I can, well, anyway, so that's another bed of arugula. But I would come back the next day, uncover the net, and you can see that areas are starting to yellow and rot throughout the bed. So, you know, with the overhead watering and not having specific zones for like the lettuce versus other crops, I was getting like trapping too much moisture within the nets. So instead of the nets this coming year, I'd like to try spraying, they're called beneficial nematodes. And I've been doing some research on this and it's expensive, but I know that with regular spraying of these nematodes, they will actually prevent flea beetles from being an issue in the beds. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a risk, but it's something I'd like to try. And I can probably use a system of both the nets and the beneficials.
Yeah. It sounds like you really need to make some pretty good observations of your growing operation. Do you have like a
Yeah.
farmer journal or something that you record these things in, or is
Yeah,
this
I mean,
all?
I take a lot of notes, and I'm also just one of those people, like, I can tell you every single bed of the whole year and exactly what happened.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, I'm out there a lot. So another thing that I've just kind of been experimenting with and trying to decide what I want to do next year is I grow the lettuce heads in fabric with cut holes. So here's an example of like some new heads that I had just planted. The fabric is really great for, weed control, because this was a new plot that I prepped. So it's great for weed control and also for like cooling off the soil for the lettuce in the summer. But some issues that I found with it was like if it was really hot, those lower leaves that maybe were holding like humidity underneath them would either scorch on the fabric or like start to rot because there was like trapped moisture underneath and then like blazing sun on the fabric. So I started to
Yeah. So it's like a lack of airflow, maybe?
yeah, I think so. Same as kind of like in the netting, it's like a
Yeah.
lack of airflow. Also, sometimes the opposite problem was that these overhead watering sprinklers actually weren't getting to the roots of the lettuce. So sometimes like the opposite, like it was too dry because I wasn't using drip irrigation. I was just using overhead. So I started to do some experiments with growing lettuce without fabric. And so here's kind of like a side by side, like here's some new beds in the fabric, and then here's an older bed without fabric and a newer bed without fabric. And I put a layer of, like, I used my amendments that I use in the soil, but then I put a layer of compost like just on top of the soil and planted into that. And that has been kind of served the same purpose as the fabric. I'm not getting many weeds, and it's keeping the soil like moist and cool. So that's kind of a side-by-side comparison. Most people that grow lettuce like year-round like to use the fabric, but I'm liking this as well. So
Amazing.
yeah, I would say another big thing is like I didn't get a soil test this year, and my thinking was that, oh, I'm at Earth Dance, they have amazing soil.
One of the oldest organic farms west of the Mississippi, right?
Mississippi. And Matt Lebon worked there, so of course it's perfect. I'm just kidding, he's going next. But let's see what else I can bring you up here.
Yeah.
Here's some other lettuces. So I did.
You're just wondering if maybe there were some crops that extracted a lot of nutrients and you needed to amend the soil before you actually.
Right. Well, so I used some amendments, but I was just kind of guessing based on like what I'm growing, what they normally need, which is going to be like decent amounts of nitrogen. But I won't go into all of that. But I decided not to get a soil test. But at some point in the season, I was noticing some issues, and so I did get a really good soil test, and it looks like I need to probably address that next season. So it's just like kind of like something that I need to look into.
Yeah. It wasn't something like magnesium or something that was getting locked up with calcium or something.
There was something with that. There were quite a few things. So I think I've done really well. Done well considering. But yeah, so I just need to look into that more. And then just a couple other quick things is that, at the height of the summer, I'm planting these little baby lettuces. That 1 week, it was like 100 degrees all week. I lost a lot of lettuce that week, and I talked to one of my mentors, and he's like, there's something that you're missing. And not only the soil test, he's the one that had me get it, but we really talked about hardening off the lettuces, and I don't think I was doing a good enough job. And so once I started to really train the lettuces to get ready for the fields, like they did much, much better. So I really dedicated like a week of bringing the lettuces outside every day, babying them, cooling them off with misting, and the next plantings that I did, I barely lost any lettuce. So that was another big lesson. It was just like training your plants from the greenhouse to the soil, especially lettuce in the summer, which is, a big challenge. Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, I know that there's already, Sarah Kaplan is in the chat already wondering about how far apart do you have to grow different kinds of squash. Do you have any insight into squash, or is that more like a Tyrean?
That'd probably be Tyrean. I don't grow squash. I mainly focus on cool season vegetables.
Yeah, Cucurbitaceae or whatever, right? Family, right? So if I plant them too close together, will I get weird squash, or is that just for saving seeds? So the thing about that, Tyrean, and then the other question she had was for Jill. How do you design crop protection? Like, how do you find out what the choices are?
Well, I mean, you're talking about barriers, it sounds like. I mean, there's different ways we can protect crops from pests or weather or whatever. So I would need a more specific, is it from pests, protection from pests? Or
maybe Sarah can chime back in.
I mean, I can give a specific, like if it's for pests, like with brassicas, for example, like their biggest pest might be the flea beetle. Well, the flea beetle is tiny, 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 tiny. So you have to have a very fine mesh. Like you couldn't use an insect netting that has bigger like holes in it, like you could against like caterpillars or something. But for flea beetles, it has to be like super fine mesh. So that would go with things that flea beetles like, which is brassicas. So that's just one example.
I think she got it. She just said, okay, got it. Because she was thinking about her row covers.
Oh, okay, row covers. Yep.
Yeah.
That would be more maybe for extending the season from cold or.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Hey, Tyrean, did you have a thought on the squash question?
Yeah, I'm actually going winter squash right now. Well, what I do, I space them. I do like 18 inches, but right between 15 and 18 inches apart. With the actual plant spacing, and then the rows will be probably about 12 feet apart. That's what I do. Yeah.
They like to travel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's cool.
And they said about weird squash too. Some of mine are close, and I'm not getting any cross pollination issues. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I have it. So.
Cool. Hopefully that answers that question. Did you, Matt or Tyrean, did you have any thoughts or questions, curiosities for Jill?
Yes, I do. Actually, she answered a lot of them, which was awesome. I guess my question is, so you said that you use nematodes, right? Nematodes, am I saying that right?
Nematodes, yeah.
So if that's better than, this is just from my knowledge as well, and whoever's listening, what's the difference between neem oil or BT or Be Safe? Like, is that better than those or what?
So the beneficial nematodes, I would be using specifically for preventing flea beetles. I think that they're also beneficial for other pests, but that's like the main thing that I know beneficial nematodes can prevent. And you have to apply it like once a month for like 5 months in a row. You have to really go at it. The BT and the other things that you talked about, I've used those for like caterpillars, and it depends on which one, pyganic, BT. It really depends on what pest you're trying to prevent as to like which of those sprays you would choose. But the nematodes is more of like a preventative. So like hoping that, I don't know, I think of the nematodes as a preventative. I don't know if that makes sense. So,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
didn't try it this year, but I'm hoping to do it next year after talking to a mentor of mine who has been using it the last few years and has gotten rid of all of his insect nets, which
Wow.
would be really nice because I have a lot of them on my farm, and it makes everything really tight and it's hard to move around. And then the issue that I was talking about of keeping the moisture, and then I lose crops because things rot. So I'm really wanting to do that next year.
And what my other question was, do you think it's best for lettuce to be transplanted or direct sow?
Yeah. I did another experiment. I didn't get into all of that because there's so many things I experimented with this year, but I think it depends on what you want your outcome to be. So if you want to do like grow a head of lettuce, I think it's better to transplant it, like baby it in the greenhouse and then transplant it. If you're wanting to do like salad mix, like where you cut the lettuce, you could do the direct seeding, the direct sowing then, and grow it really close together and cut it as salad. And then you get more in the bed that way. So I do both, and it kind of depends on like how I'm using it as the outcome. But I think anything that you're going to start in the greenhouse and transplant, you're probably going to have a higher success.
Cool, thank you. And your lettuce does look beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Jill, I just wanted to clarify for folks that might not know, and maybe for me too, the nematode is an actual organism. And is it a soil organism that's going to live in the soil? Or and is it applied through a spray?
yes, a spray onto the soil.
Spray onto the soil? Okay. Because I know a lot of people will talk about nematodes being pretty bad things. They, eat away at the roots and everything else of the plants and
So
stuff,
there's
right?
beneficials, and then there's the pests. I don't know a lot about the difference, but
Right. And then these, like the BT and all these types of practices, both Tyrean and Jill, would these be organic rated type?
Most definitely. Yeah, most definitely organic. I like neem oil, but only thing about neem oil, when it rains, it get washed off. But
right.
my go-to is I like BT. BT is my favorite, but like you said, it all depends. I've been using Be Safe as well. So it's just, I guess, whatever you find, what you like to use the best, I guess. It works. Yep.
Yeah. That's great. I really appreciate that. And then Loving Roots Urban Farm, got your contact up there. And then Matt, are you still out there? There you are on my screen. We'll get Matt up here with Custom Foodscaping, kind of talk about what he's doing in the backyard.
All right, you ready to start with the screen share there?
Yeah, you should be able to go.
Okay.
This is so awesome. I'm learning so much. Thank you, Jill and Tyrean. This has been great. No pressure, Matt.
Yeah, these are some amazing farmers to follow for sure. But I appreciate you taking the pressure off, because now I'm not feeling it, Bob.
Yeah.
All right. So my screen share up? We're ready to rock?
Gotcha. I can see it.
Fabulous. Well, we basically, I should have recontextualized the top of this slide to be foodscaping our backyards. And because we're talking about the whole collective backyard in this case, the one that we live in, the Mother Earth of our community. And so Custom Foodscaping, we are a design, installation, and maintenance company that does work very similar to a landscaping company, except we do foodscaping. And we try to summarize that as simply as possible with our tagline, which is the "Have your landscape and eat it too."
Love that.
We just believe that the landscapes that surround our everyday lives can and should be full of food-producing plants, whether that be gardens or fruit trees or berry patches, because there is so much magic and so much transformation that can happen both ecologically and from a health perspective when we do that. So that's kind of what I'm going to share about with my little time. Before I dive in, I just always like to set the foundation so that we can be sure we know why we're doing this work, right? Because I think this Jill and Tyrean would echo this sentiment that this is far too often the landscapes that are currently surrounding our backyard. And I don't think that this audience needs a reminder of how incredibly destructive this is, both on our communities and on our bodies and our medical system. And this is the other kind of landscape that seems to pervade our landscapes when it's not full of fast junk food. And this is another type of, egregious insult against Mother Earth that is squandering so many of our precious resources and indiscriminately spraying poison all over the world in order to maintain some ideal of the yard that we have here in St. Louis. And I believe that we can have our landscape and eat it too, right? We can have something that's beautiful, functional, and productive. And so that's really what we're aiming for, right? We're trying.
Man, that's so great. Can I just step in? Like the whole thing about lawns, man. I mean, they're like just barely a step below concrete as far as water runoff, right? I mean, and we use so much water, and it just runs right off of this, like almost a hardscape, a hard pan that happens underneath lawns, right? The water doesn't filter in to our system, right?
Absolutely. And then of course, all of the herbicides and other junk that we are spraying to maintain our green lawn, because if you ever have tried to grow a lawn that looks like that without calling the true lawn people to spray out every piece of nutsedge or crabgrass,
or violet,
then you realize very quickly that nature doesn't really want to make that happen easily. We've got to really do a lot of destruction in order to create something that green and lush. So what we're trying to do is create the opposite. We want to, replace the junk food aisle with the kinds of fresh fruits and veggies that Tyrean and Jill are growing. And we want, green lawns to go into perennial abundance. And the kinds of, and what I mean by perennial abundance in this case, when we look at that picture, is really like an analysis of like, well, if we're putting all of these resources into this perennial lawn, which is this grass that's always there, we got to always water it, always got to, keep it weed free. Why not put the same energy into something that gives back to us in a big way? And so that's really what we're all about. I think that what's come to symbolize that for me more than anything, what we're trying to create before I really dive into what we're doing with custom foodscaping is to just do something so very simple. And that is the simple idea that, the next generation grow up playing outside and pulling on mulberry trees and harvesting fruit right off of, right off the vine, right? Thank you for that reenactment, Bob. You're doing a great job.
Oh my God. That's just the last walk I went through the park with Matt, He'd take you anywhere and say, hey, here, try this.
It just seems like so much of our birthright to be able to just go outside and understand what the delicious foods are that are growing outside of our homes and getting dirty and scraping knees and climbing trees and picking, delicious food all the while, so that we can have an answer to the whole screen time debacle that is just crushing the childhood out of an entire generation right now. And
yeah, look away from your screens, but not right now, because this is really good, important information.
Right? I mean, if all we're giving to our children is lush green grass sprayed with herbicide, I don't think we have a very big incentive to get them outside beyond that screen. But if we're giving them trees to pull on and fruits to eat and, wild nature in our backyard, then I think that it's going to be way easier to reverse the current trend. So anyway, you know, what is foodscaping, right? And what does this future look like? And we're really all about redefining what our landscapes look like with fun shapes and growing food in public places and, you know, getting on ladders in our front yard and picking abundant apples because gosh dang it, like we only have space in our urban and suburban landscapes for a handful of trees and we should get something out of them, not only beautiful apple blooms, but hundreds of pounds of fruit. And of course, what happens, Bob, when you stand on a ladder in the front yard and pick apples? What's inevitably going to be the next thing that happens?
I'm going to be making some applesauce, man, you know?
Yeah.
Or other people are going to come by and they're going to say,
Yeah.
hey, can I borrow some of that?
Neighbors.
Exactly.
Neighbors.
Exactly. That's where the magic happens because everybody who's riding their bike and walking by is going to be like, whoa, are you picking apples? Like, honestly, people will not even believe that you're picking food right from a tree in your yard, and it's a miracle. And it's, you know, it's just once you've had the paradigm broken that food doesn't have to come from the grocery store, that you can just pick it and eat it in your yard, I think it just, you know, blows people's minds. And the really big problem is that so many of the typical plants that are being sold at nurseries. So we are really trying to expose many of the plants that make foodscaping possible, you know, and it's an uncommon plant palette for the most part. And that's a really important piece of this, is understanding what are the plants we have at our disposal, you know. And when we start to put these landscapes together, you know, we're creating backyard food forests like the one you see here, and landscapes that can be both productive and wild, but provide, you know, for not only the ecology, but food for us and our neighbors. Some of the highlight projects we're excited about, you know, we've worked with some early childhood centers now where we're designing and installing gardens where kids can get outside and get dirty, plant seeds, walk on stepping stones, you know, play in a space that feels much more natural. We're working with restaurants like Vicia, getting restaurant gardens full of uncommon plants because, you know, so many of the local food entrepreneurs are looking for novelty. You know, it's a great time to grow weird things because the chef movement is gonna, you know, just put that in a big highlight and ensure that we can educate people about what these new funky foods are. We're doing a lot of backyard like woodlands, which has been really fun. This idea of like a forageable yard, right? Talk about the backyard and making it feel big. What would it be like, you know, if you walked outside and you had just, you know, some berries to pick, you were eating the hostas and the ostrich ferns and letting strawberries kind of run all over the place as ground cover. And not so much of a tidy garden per se, but more of a forageable landscape that on any given day you can go pick something or maybe you don't need to.
I mean, imagine taking, you know, 15 minutes instead of 30 seconds to get from the car back into the house.
I like that.
And we've gotten really into the raised bed gardens, and we found that the adding the infrastructure of a raised bed has really been a key in helping shift people from seeing the garden as something that is kind of like can be an eyesore to something that looks a lot more tidy and fits into our landscapes. You know, so much of our urban and suburban soil is either polluted with lead or completely compacted, you know, junk clay that had all the good soil scraped away for development. So the raised bed has been a real key. We've been working on a lot of fruit tree plantings, and that's really a big part of the business too. You know, with schools and churches, like planting fruit trees are, you know, Jill and Tyrean can tell you, like growing vegetables on scale is so labor intensive and it really requires incredible dedication. But we really focus a lot of our plantings on perennial trees and shrubs that come back every year. You know, we're doing that at schools and things that we can kind of steward as opposed to look after year. And we're seeing that, you know, so many fruit trees like pawpaws and persimmons, apples, pears. Yeah.
Pawpaw, I love the pawpaw.
these are all fall bearing, fruits. And so they lend themselves really well to blending into the school environment. And to
What
kind of
about,
wrap.
yeah, what about maintenance on that stuff there? Because I heard a guy talking about, the first couple of years you might put in extra time, but as years go by, your backyard becomes less time for maintenance, right?
Oh man, I would argue against that. I would say that once you plant the tree, you've done the most of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't actually get to be more labor intensive until you have a big tree, because harvesting ends up being the biggest task aside from pruning in the winter. So there's winter pruning, and then there's the abundant harvest. And if you've got a loaded tree, that can take a long time to harvest. But after you plant it, then you just got to make sure, you get it watered that first year. And usually after it gets established that first year, you're golden.
Cool.
So we're really working towards trying to create this new economy, Bob. This idea that foodscaping be a profession and something that we have, crews of people running around the city who don't, do like what we're seeing in these pictures, but who know how to tend edible landscapes, who are working in people's backyards, helping them grow delicious food, and creating, spaces in the same way that the current landscaping industry works, but putting all that time, energy, and resources into an economy of foodscapers, so that we can do good with all of this, with this whole existing land maintenance that we have right now. And of course, regenerate soils and teach a new generation where food comes from. So that's my spiel. I'm sticking to it.
That is so awesome. I love it there. I love everything that you're doing. We do have a question from Debbie Evans. When you are foodscaping, how do you address critters like deer and rabbits? And I remember, Jill, you did a Facebook Live talking about your thing. But Matt, do you have something that you do?
Yeah, well, the thing with the deer is you really need exclusion measures. We just need fencing mostly. Yep. And so we do, on smaller spaces, we use just perimeter fencing to keep deer out. If it's around fruit trees and things like that, we will fence off the individual trees until they're big enough to get above deer browse. We're doing a lot of like deer-proof vegetable gardens, where we make the vegetable garden perimetered with trellising, and then the deer can't jump in, and then it doubles as a fence and a trellis. I would say with the rabbits, there's the same deal. It's challenging. You've got to use, in my experience, like fencing to exclude them and make sure that, but that's usually way more affordable and simple than the deer.
Yeah. Cool. Matt, anything? Sarah wants to know: should I do anything to feed my young fruit trees? They're heavily mulched with wood chips right now. And she says, yes, on the new economy. So we got a convert already. Yeah.
Oh man, I would say that the wood chips is a great start if you have access to compost tea or want to brew your own. I'm a really big fan of putting that biological diversity into the root zone of your fruit trees. And the main thing is, in my experience, if you see that a fruit tree is growing well in the first year or two, putting on a foot or more of growth each year, you likely don't even need to feed it. I mean, a lot of fruit trees will just go gangbusters on their own. And if you are not seeing that, then yep, I do think some organic fertilizers are probably in order.
Thanks, Matt, so much. Any questions, Tyrean or Jill, for Matt?
Go ahead, Jill.
I'm just super excited about what Matt's doing, and I feel like it's something that everybody can jump on board, like who doesn't want that? We just have to change the mindset of like the lawns and all that. So, but no questions. I mean, I was going to ask Matt about like over time, do you have less maintenance over and over and over time? But I would think that there's certain things that pop up, like, yeah, when the tree gets really big, it's going to take a long time to harvest. But in general, is it the thought that over time you have less and less work, but you're producing more and more?
Yeah, I think that's such an important point about the way that we design our food producing landscapes. Like anything, when we invest our money, for example, we want that investment to make money for us so that we ultimately don't, like, we get to reap the rewards down the road, like in a savings account, right? Or a retirement account. It's the same thing when we plant perennial trees and shrubs and things like that. Like right now, you know, if you need food fast, like vegetable gardening is so amazing. But in the meantime, let's plant fruit trees so that in 10, 20 years, we're getting, you know, and nut trees, I should say as well, we're getting such an abundant harvest that when our bodies are older and it's a lot harder to tend to the land, all we have to do is just reach up in the sky and pull, like, Bob, what were you doing? What was your motion there for? Yeah, exactly.
The mulberry motion.
See, that the mulberry motion is one where you're standing upright and just getting to shake goodness into your mouth. The
Yeah.
and that's kind of how I want to get old. And I think that that's kind of my philosophy on that, Jill. The longer we got to invest in perennial crops now while our bodies can do it, so that as we get older, there's more and more bounty.
Yeah.
All right, and yeah, so my question was, actually, I got like a little quirky question for myself. Why do mulberries always grow in the fence? It seemed like.
Oh, well, basically the mulberries would grow everywhere. The reason they're growing in the fence is because you're mowing your lawn and it's way harder to mow the fence. So if you didn't mow your lawn, you'd see the mulberries everywhere. But it's only because it's hard to mow the fence that you see the mulberries there.
Okay.
And the reason why they're there is because the birds love the mulberries, and so they poop out the seeds as they're perching on the fence.
Also true.
So
Yeah.
they're being sowed there. So
In the city, that's the only place I find mulberries. It seems like is in the fence. Like
I know, scooting all the way through there, right?
yeah, and you can try your best be in the past to try to cut it or whatever. It's going to come back. Like there's no stopping the mulberry. But they're delicious.
No. Good questions. We got another question. We have a lot of shade in our yard. Which edible plants would you recommend? Raspberries grow fairly well, but we don't quite have enough sun for most summer vegetables, asks Renee. Any thoughts on a shady yard for edible plants?
You know, one of our favorite shade garden plants is actually hostas. So hostas are a super common ornamental shade garden plant. Most people don't realize that they are edible. Almost all the spring shoots are especially nice as an asparagus alternative. And then the flowers and the flower stalks on a lot of varieties are quite nice as well. You can eat them as kind of a shoot vegetable, stalk vegetable. So that's one that there's a lot of still research that needs to be done on specific best varieties, but that's one that's available everywhere and really quite easy to grow.
The deer definitely know that hosta is edible.
They know what's up. Yeah.
They do. That's amazing. So kind of like a last question for each of you is, I mean, you all have such a great passion for what you're doing and really appreciate where you're at and the vision that you have. You know, Tyrean, that's kind of that community vision, and Jill with, you know, growing, you know, the lettuces and all that, and Matt with your vision of more perennial stuff. I'm just kind of curious, what kind of support do you need from the community in order to get there? You know?
I can go. So right now I'm in a temporary space and I'm really looking for city land because I do have a community. I mean, my vision of this farm is all about community. And I want to have that urban farm where you bike by, walk by, scooter by, and you go, wow, that's beautiful. And you come in and you learn about what I like to do. So I'm looking for land. And I just keep putting the word out there. So That's what I need help on. A half acre or so in the city. Yeah, that's how I need help.
Hopefully someone's got some land out there. We'll
Yeah.
find. We could always use more.
Yeah, I'll go. So, not quite right now, but volunteers is always needed. You can go on my website, herurbanfarming.com. You want to, or send me an email, and that's more, especially at the beginning of the growing season, like in springtime, you know, and in the summertime and all that stuff. So, yeah, volunteers, and I think I mentioned it earlier. I'm also having a campaign right now on Kiva, and I'm trying to raise some money to give me some more equipment that I need, and actually purchase some more land as well. So I'll add that in the chat, and those my two things.
Oh, awesome.
I love it. Add me to the land bandwagon. We're looking to create a headquarters as well. But really what I think I am looking for more than anything are champions for this idea. You know, this is really nice to have in our backyards, but if we're going to create the culture shift we're looking for, I think we need champions within the healthcare system, within the school system, within the, care facility system. We need institutions to have champions within them say, hey, we need gardens, we need fruit trees, we need healthy food grown on site, so that it's not just hidden away in the backyards of a wealthy few, but given access to all.
That's great. I really appreciate that thought from you, Matt, and all the great work, Jill, Tyrean, Matt, you're all doing out there. You're truly some sustainability heroes for us. I want to thank everyone for showing up today. I want to thank Solid Waste Management District and the Missouri Department of Natural Resources for the grant funding, and Sauce Magazine that really helps us with a lot of advertising for our Green Dining Alliance program. So they're fantastic sponsors. We're looking forward to tomorrow night at 5:30, an intro to community herbalism with Tend and Flourish. We've got Crystal Stevens and Alex Quetham going to be a part of that. And you can reach out to Jill Duncan. She's taking orders starting probably tomorrow night. You got to get online there quick or get sold out. And then you saw those lovely veggies. Yeah. And you want to pick those up in the Grove on Sunday morning. So order them as soon as you can. Tyrean, how do people get a hold of you? Can just anybody get your stuff? Are you selling your stuff somewhere or what?
Yeah, so I normally would do a farmer's market, but right now I had a abundance of CSAs, which I'm blessed for. Only wanted to sell 10 of them, and I sold 30 of them. So most of my crops go there. And,
okay.
And I do sell to local business. But I do hand-to-hand sales right now. I'm selling watermelon. I got a couple more weeks of still harvesting, so that's been a blessing to me. And I got some winter squashes, and I got some fall crops coming within the next few weeks. And they can get at me on my social media, on my Instagram, which is Heru Urban Farming, my website, which is HeruUrbanFarming.com, and also my Facebook business page, which is also Heru Urban Farming. So yeah.
Heru, you got your hand in a bunch of things, man, and it's so great to have you being a leader out there too. So we're all learning a lot. So thank you for that, Matt. I see you got CustomFoodscaping.com in the chat, so that's how folks can get in touch with you to design a nice edible landscape for themselves. Anything else there that any last words from anybody? I just really appreciate you all being here.
Yeah, I was gonna say thanks for having me. Thank you for having this platform for people like me, Jill, and Matt to come on and share little knowledge we have and whatnot. And yeah, and I appreciate it. Yeah, everybody's doing wonderful things.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. You all have a good night. Take care.